We're now going to go to The Economist, Professor Danny Blanchflower. Now, Mr. Blanchflower, you're in New Hampshire, I understand. What are you feeling over there looking at this? Because you worked for the Bank of England. You've been in these positions before of economic crisis. What do you think of what's going on here?
Well, I think you said the party is in chaos, the country's in chaos. I mean, I'm an economist. I think what started this off was it put markets into chaos. And I wrote a column in July and I said, I'm afraid Liz Stupid is behaving as Mrs. Stupid, and at some point she has to return to being Mrs. Sensible, and the permanent secretary at the Treasury will probably tell her of sensible things to do. Well, on day one, they shot the messenger, and it was quite clear that the markets were not going to like this, and they ploughed on. So I think your commentators were interesting in the sense that they talked about, well, maybe this will turn around. I think in terms of the economics, Pandora's box has been opened. This is a complete disaster. And actually, I think there's a conference that's actually probably even more important than the Tory party conference, which is next week. And next week has the meeting of the IMF in Washington, D.C., and I suspect you're going to hear cataclysmic commentary from finance ministers all around the world, and they're going to come, and journalists are going to come back to Truss and Kwarteng and say, look what you've done, you've messed up the world. So I think it's catastrophic. I call it the economics of pandemonium. But I just don't think there's any turning back, Piers. I think this is now we're in the end game.
Yeah, I do feel it could unravel very, very quickly, because I think that it's not just economic chaos, it's now political chaos.
No, I agree.
With open infighting amongst cabinet ministers, all contradicting each other. There's no collective responsibility. There's no sense of leadership from Liz Truss or control over her own cabinet even, let alone the economy or the country.
Right.
And when you have a rudderless leader like this, my experience is it normally falls apart very quickly.
Well, I agree with that. And you've talked about the politics. But I want to go to the economics. I mean, the truth is, in the economics, 1 hour is a really long time. I mean, we have to look back at things that we've never seen. We saw pension funds nearly being closed down on Monday. We saw mortgage companies not even being able to price products. So I do think that, but I think now I mean, maybe we have to use the word the death spiral. I mean, we're literally at the point now where the markets are sitting on a knife edge. And I've sat there long and hard trying to think, well, if Piers Morgan and I were the Chancellor and the Governor of the Bank of England, what could we do? And I think the answer is it's very, very hard to see. I mean, if she's just scrapped everything, I don't think that works. So I think the economics is now so lost that the political chaos and all the rest of it have kind of combined together. And the ultimate one we have to think about the housing market, Piers. So now there's 1.6 million people who are going to see their mortgages tick up. We've got all these youngsters who are trying to buy a new house and can't. So this is a disaster coming. And what's the Bank of England going to have to do? It's going to have to raise rates. So now you have to think, the woman on the Mile End Road omnibus is going to stand up and say, what about me? And a mile down the road, the bankers are getting extra bonuses. So I think everything you've said I agree with, but I want to add to it that I think what will drive everything will be the economics, because now he says I'm going to scrap the 45% rate, but what about all the other stuff? These are unfunded. You say, I'm going to wait till November the 23rd. You can't wait till Friday.
Right, I mean, totally
really,
agree.
Like you said. Don't you agree with that?
Well, I do, but thank you for that very cheery assessment. I think that's going to... I'm afraid that the worst thing about it is I kind of agree with you. I think from an economic point of view, everyone I've talked to who knows about economics thinks this has been a total basket case. And it's staggering to me that the Conservative Party, which has always historically prided itself on being the party of economic competence, has now been exposed as so unbelievably incompetent with the economy. But that's where we are. Professor, thank you very much indeed.
But I think the question...
final word to you.
Thank you very much, of course. Thank you.
The final word to you,
I was going to say the question... Yeah, the final question I think you have to ask people is, what are you going to do to calm this all down? I mean, you're going to have the Chancellor. OK, all of this stuff, but what are you going to do to calm everything down? And he has no clue. So that's the killer question.
Yeah, it is.
You can't stop it, can you?
You can't. Professor, I'm afraid I agree with you, which is not what I wanted to do because it's so doom-laden, but I agree.
No.
Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.